Hello there everybody, WhatCulture Wrestling's Adam Cleary here, and if there is one universal truth, one universal consistent we can all identify in WWE, it's that every couple of months you'll take a long look at somebody right in the mid-card and go, ah yes, failed push. Humberto Carrillo, Cedric Alexander, Aleister Black, and even Ricochet to an extent until he got that really random Saudi match against Brock Lesnar. Loads of people who have debuted on the main roster to fanfare, to acclaim, to improbable winning streaks, and then just out of nowhere found themselves right back down in the mid-card because it didn't stick. They're all tragic cases because the company now seems unable to build somebody from the ground up. They have to come in and be the most exciting thing in WWE. They have to be the next big prodigy that's gonna make it in the title picture, and then, well, obviously not everybody can, so they fall back down the card. And this isn't a new thing, it's been going on for decades upon decades upon decades, but the thing about it is, once you've pushed somebody that hard, you can't keep that going. You can make them a big star after you've put the groundwork in, and in these examples, if they just made one tiny little alteration, it would have worked. So with that in mind, my name is Adam Cleary, and these are 10 failed WWE pushes one tweak away from perfection. Number 10, Lex Luger. I mean, you could be forgiven for thinking this could never have possibly worked. After Hulk Hogan left the company, Vince McMahon took a long, hard look at Bret Hart and the numbers he was posting and decided, no, it's not going to work. I need to find my new Hulkster, and the only possible candidate he had was the recently turned heel Lex Luger. I mean, if we're being totally honest about this, Vince probably didn't want to create another Hulk Hogan. They weren't exactly on the best of terms at that time, but he was desperate, and he thought that's what fans wanted, even if there was actually no proof that they did. And you know what? It would have worked if they had just put him over in his first big title match. And pardon the simplicity of this, some of the following entries are incredibly complicated, but after you took him off the house show run and put him on his own private bus and spent more money on him than they'd ever spent on anybody in wrestling history, why not just make that count by putting the title on him? I know they wanted to save it for WrestleMania, but given how far away that was, it was just a gamble too far. By the time it came around, crowds were completely indifferent to the Lex Express and to Luger Mania and whatever the hell else they were calling it. Number 9, Mason Ryan. Rarely in WWE main event history has there been an open goal quite like Mason Ryan. Like, yes, he was new and he was exciting, but he was also massive and he was handsome and he was going to be hidden within a group of far more talented members while he ironed out all the problems in his act. Unfortunately, this was 2011, and that particular stable was the Nexus, and his entire career and his entire push was just had the legs taken out from under it before it could even really start. And other than that one time he was CM Punk's big bad mate in the Royal Rumble, his size never translated to intimidation, never translated to dominance until he was back in developmental, by which time it was too late. But it all could have worked if they had just made him the agent of change that Punk had promised. Yeah, like as the leader of the new Nexus, Punk perpetually promised all these things about, oh, this is going to change and that's going to change, but creative only ever saw it as one big star and his squad of goons, and none of them ever got anything substantial to do. If you'd given Mason Ryan a feud of his own perhaps, or even have him turn on Punk, then it might have actually stuck. Number 8, Ryback. Now, this failed for all the reasons wrestlers fail when they lose their undefeated streak, because it exposes all the weaknesses in the act that you previously couldn't see when they were squashing geeks. And the thing was, when he was squashing geeks, it worked. The guy was unbelievably protected, looked unbelievably strong, and was in the process unbelievably over. But then an injury to John Cena left them with a big gap at the top of the card, and he just seemed like the obvious choice. Crowds were going mad for him, and they needed someone to challenge CM Punk, so why not elevate Ryback? And you know what? It all would have worked if they had just kept him the away from the WWE Championship unless they were actually ready to put it on him. And the thing is, I know me and Ryback aren't exactly mates, but go back and look at the buy rate for that pay-per-view where he was in the main event. It was one of the last big bumper ones WWE ever did, because there was a genuine demand to see that guy at the top of the card and a change in the structure of the company. But CM Punk had a date with The Rock at the Royal Rumble in 3 months' time, and Ryback was just a speed bump to him at that point. If they had just kept him out of the situation and saved him for the post-WrestleMania run that following year, when they could actually put the belt on him, they could have actually thought past the People's Champion, it might have worked. Might have done. Number 7, Bobby Lashley. Now, specifically, I'm talking about Bobby Lashley around the 2006-2007 era, because he is pretty much the archetypal example of what happens when a mega babyface push goes wrong. You think they did it bad with Roman, you think they did it bad with Seth, they did it so much worse with Bobby Lashley, and they did it first. And why did they do it with him? Well, to quote Vince, Look at him. The thing is, right, Bobby Lashley could have been one of the greatest stars in WWE history, but as soon as Vince got his hands on this big, muscly, shiny toy, he wanted to do everything with him straight away. He had no patience in building him as a genuine challenger. He just stuck the ECW belt on him for no real reason, then made him Donald Trump's advocate years before he was ready for either position. And the thing is, it all could have worked out for Bobby Lashley. He could have been one of the greatest stars the company has ever seen if they had just calmed down. A version of Bobby Lashley where he hones his skills and he works his way up the card over a year and a half, possibly even 2 years, is a version of Bobby Lashley that would have been ready to win Royal Rumbles and main event WrestleManias. The crowd rejected him because he should never have been in the positions they were putting him in. He was never good enough for the roles they were giving him, and he would have been if they just let him build to it. It's just that simple. If you want to be the best, you actually have to be the best, not 2 or 3 years away from being the best, and Vince just gets them big old hard-ons, doesn't he? For those muscly dudes that just wants to throw them in right away. Number 6, RTruth. It's kind of a tragic story, this, really. RTruth does his first and only pay-per-view main event as a comedy heel, as somebody who's really interesting and three-dimensional, and people aren't sure whether to cheer or to boo, but he's in the main event nonetheless. And then, a couple of weeks later, CM Punk does the pipe bomb. The guy liked to smoke in arenas, he liked to mess with the fans, he would lose his mind at the very sight of John Cena, and it was something different. It was something the company could have really run with had they not got the hottest ever feud in decades on their hands mere weeks afterwards. But the thing is, it all could still have worked if they had just had a bit of faith. The thing is, right, RTruth didn't give up on being the biggest prick in WWE, it's just that the company gave up on him. And as we've learned with the whole 24/7 championship and literally everything he has done since then, he's a genius when it comes to sports entertainment. The man can make gold out of shit. Like, what feels like an absolute burial from the company, he tends to make into one of the most entertaining things on the entire show. Like his whole partnership with Carmella in the dance breaks. That was unbelievable. He had an imaginary child. That got over more than half the roster. The 24/7 championship would be absolutely nothing without the work he'd put into it. The guy can make stuff work if you just give him the platform. And that was the thing. They took the platform away from him because they thought with CM Punk they didn't need somebody else who was going to energize the crowd like that. And they were wrong. Number 5, Test. He does kind of get forgotten about in all of this, but in that Triple H career-defining breakout program with Stephanie and with Vince and the McMahon-Helmsley era and all of that, in the midst of all that, Test was getting over huge. Like, the guy was as green can be, don't get me wrong, but he was right in the middle of that story, which was dominating all the airtime on both Raw and SmackDown. Yes, it was a career-making moment for Triple H, but in the midst of all that, Test actually beat him on Raw, and people received him as a natural babyface hero. There was a brief moment in 1999 when people would have genuinely received him as, like, the top guy in the company. Like, mostly to get one over on Triple H, and yes, that does say more about Triple H's heel work than does anything Test was doing, but there was a moment where you could have made him a star, and instead, by the next year, he'd slid back down into the tag team ranks, and his name was being used as a pun on the word tits. But it could have all worked out for him if they had just made him WWE champion at Survivor Series 99. Now, yeah, this one does feel like a bit of a roll of the dice, but this is literally the same championship belt that Jinder Mahal held for 170 days, so what the hell? Instead of putting the Big Show in that match, put Test in it. The guy was about to lose his storyline wife to Triple H and thus his spot at the top of the card. Why not just put that belt on him for a couple of weeks and see if it worked out? See if people genuinely bought him as a champion. Who knows? The shine from that might have carried on for a couple of years afterwards. Who knows? Number 4, CM Punk. Now, I don't mean like this version of CM Punk, whose push obviously worked for him because he's still one of the biggest things in pro wrestling. I mean this version of CM Punk in like 2006, 2007, because they just kept trying to make him a big deal and he never felt like a big deal. Like Vince just fed him crap sandwich after crap sandwich after crap sandwich, then they tried to make him the face of ECW and absolutely nobody bought it. But they would have done, and his career at the top of WWE could have started years sooner if they had just put the ECW championship on him and let him hold it for flipping ages. Now, alright, yes, that is technically more than one tweak, but it was also one sentence, so I'm totally going to count it. CM Punk as ECW champion in the midst of that long winning streak would have felt more important, it would have felt more impactful, it would have felt more aggressive, more ECW, it would have felt like he was to be taken more seriously and expedited that run to either Raw or SmackDown. It would have done. Now, yes, don't get me wrong, if you did all of that, then maybe you wouldn't have got the whole slow build up to Money in the Bank 2011, and maybe you wouldn't have got one of the greatest matches and programs in WWE history, but my point is, they tried to give him a push back then, and it failed, and I am a genius and could have made it work. Number 3, the Nexus. Now, stop me if you've heard this one with a million other WWE superstars before them, but the Nexus got a really strong start into the company, which kind of wobbled a lot due to some really lousy booking, and then, when they really needed to win the most, they lost. The Nexus losing to Team WWE at Survivor Series that year wasn't the end of the group. It wasn't the final nail in the coffin or anything, but it was certainly putting them all in the coffin and then putting 7 or 8 nails in around the outside. Then also booking the hearse, digging up the plot of land you need to bury them all in it, and everybody buying a black veil. But it all would have worked. It all would have worked, if you've not already guessed, if they just beaten John Cena. And the weird thing is, they did it the first time and it worked so well. It's an absolute wonder they didn't realize what they had on their hands and how well it was working and just keep doing it until all of them were made men for years. All of the goofs from the Jumped Up talent show, all of the ways that was cringy and made you never want to watch these guys wrestle as long as they live, they undid it all by having them decimate the roster and decimate the A show and decimate the champ, and then they just stopped and they turned them all into warm bodies just waiting to have their attitudes adjusted. Bad, that. Number 2, Lord Tensai. Now, yeah, alright, the Lord Tensai thing was bad, but it was built on a foundation of even more bad with some loose bad on top of it, and then Vince dug a big hole of bad in the middle of a forest and put that in it very neatly, then reversed his dump truck full of special homemade McMahon brand bad, tipped all that into it, smoothed it out on the top and went, there's your successful stint in Japan, Mr. Matt Bloom. I'm going to build a toilet on it. But it could have worked, I swear to God, it could have worked. I swear to God that man arrived with a good enough gimmick and a good enough attitude that it could have worked if they just got rid of all the bullshit and just let him do some beatings. Like, despite how absurd it looked and the weird costume and the gimmick that was only ever going to get old really quickly, they did start him off in the company really hot. Like, he beat John Cena and CM Punk within weeks of returning. But then he started going 50-50 and he started losing and he started entering these nothing feuds, and given his persona was supposed to be one of mystery and brutality, every single time he lost, it eroded that idea still further, to the point that people weren't even getting over by beating him, they were just being hurt from association. But I swear down, if he'd just been a destroyer from day one, used sparingly, not given any mic time, not put in any long-running feuds, only seen every couple of weeks, in which he would absolutely pulverize somebody, it would have worked. Like, it would have. Number 1, Rikishi. A joyous, ridiculous, and much beloved and entertaining superstar, one of the great success stories of the Chris Krensky era, in which everything seemed to work because it was all told through long-form storytelling and making the most of everybody's individual attributes. Rikishi, in the year 2000, was one of the whole reasons you would tune in to WWE. He got to the absolute top of the mid-card, was the biggest star in it by a goddamn mile, and all because he had this huge arse that he'd like to wiggle around and stick in people's faces, and then the company thought, right, we're going to make him a proper star, we're going to put him in the main event, and we're going to do it by turning him heel. The rest is history, and not good history. He was revealed to be the man who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin, who in turn ran immediately over him when he came back from injury, and then he lost to The Rock, and then he got thrown off the top of the Hell in a Cell, and he just never did anything to cement being a genuine threat as a bad guy. He didn't win anything substantial. Just hear me out, this is what you do, right? This is what you do. Instead of making him the driver, you just keep him a big babyface star that everybody loves, and then you build to an against the odds championship opportunity, I sound like Michael Cole here, in which he wins and everybody cries, and it's just, it's so easy. So there you have it, those are 10 failed WWE pushes that were one tweak away from success, read to you by a man who, yes, realizes that he's only going to get to the very top of WhatCulture when he becomes literally bald or Simon Miller. So let me know what you made of it all in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I have, of course, been Adam Cleary, and I will see you soon, whether you like it or not.